Great. Thank you, Clara, and thanks to Phil and to the entire team at the Forest Service for the opportunity to speak with you all today. As Clara mentioned, I'm going to take a moment to just give a little bit of context and, dare I say, mood setting for the next hour. For folks who are familiar with this image on the left, this is an image of Lower Manhattan looking to the north. And this is sort of the iconic New York City skyline. And when many folks think about places like New York City, as well as other cities across our country, we tend to think of the urban environment through the lens of culture and commerce. And it is much less common for us to think about our urban, especially our dense urban areas, as places with large amounts of intact nature and as places that support significant biodiversity. If we've turned Manhattan Island on its tail and look from the northernmost tip to the south, however, that's the image on our right, you'll see over 100 acres of forested area in Inwood Hill Park. And the theme that we'll be covering today is really the theme of places like Inwood Hill Park, large concentrations of highly functional forest area that exist within our American and I would say global cities, the value that these places have for local residents, the way that they function, and the way that we can learn from them and we think about the management of forests at a national and international scale, as well as the lessons that we can learn from more traditional rural forest management that can be applied to our urban context. So thank you again, Clara, for getting us started with some context about the resource that we'll be exploring today. And I'm going to move us into the next portion of this talk, talking about a nascent national network called Forests in Cities and some of the innovative work that's being done by practitioners in cities across the country. I will, similar to what was done in the last section, just ground this topic a little bit in our local work in New York City. As Clara mentioned, the management of forested natural areas within the urban context is an area where there has been a lot of local expertise developed over many decades, but where there continues to be a lot of opportunity for innovation and learning. Our organization, the Natural Areas Conservancy, works in this space really at the intersection of research and practice, and the forest management framework, which is shown in the image on this screen, is a great example of the kind of marrying together of management expertise and research and data that we're seeing more of around the country. So the forest management framework in New York City is informed by an intensive amount of data collection over 1,100 field plots across over 7,000 acres, really looking at forest composition and threats and metrics of health within the urban forest context. But the framework marries together that ecological data with a financial framework that ties together information about the level of intervention and staffing needed to restore and manage forests within New York City based on over a decade of financial data, and also lays in a set of social goals and indicators having to do with job creation, recreation, and volunteerism. For New York, this was the first time that the city formally adopted, in collaboration with our nonprofit organization, a comprehensive framework to guide both the physical care of the forested natural area resource as well as the financial and staffing needs required to achieve those goals. And I'll just mention that in addition to being a really important roadmap for the work and care of the resource itself, it also has served as a really powerful advocacy tool because it really lays out all in a single place a whole suite of positive benefits as well as annual financial indicators. As New York City developed this framework and conducted research, we were surprised by the lack of available information from other cities around the country about how they were framing management and restoration questions for their forested natural areas, which led us to initiate in 2018 a national survey and subsequently in 2019 an engagement effort and workshop aimed at really understanding the way that practitioners across the nation were approaching the questions of management and better understanding the challenges that they face. So the primary goals of this first phase of the Forests in Cities program was aimed at increasing awareness, and I would say specifically awareness within the larger urban forestry community and within the community of urban park practitioners, beginning to explore and document the management techniques and approaches that are being used around the country and strengthening a community of practice among the NGOs and municipal organizations that are working in this space. And then with the robust response from our national survey, we built on that initial engagement, hosting a targeted workshop for 12 city teams that demonstrated leadership in this field. And together that group worked to document 25 case studies outlining emerging best practices and innovation around a suite of themes. And they really came together as a community to really learn from and support each other in our collective work. This map shows the participation from the 2018 survey. You'll see there was a response from over 125 organizations in more than 40 states. And we had a really interesting mix of NGO, government, and academic and other partners. And the survey results were really robust. We will share a link to the full survey report in the chat section of this presentation, but just to highlight a couple of key themes and takeaways. Overwhelmingly, the challenges that groups are facing in doing this type of work parallel the kinds of challenges that rural and non-urban forest managers are frequently facing. So again, sort of sitting at this intersection between what is traditionally seen as urban forestry work and the work that is done in more rural areas. 94% of cities identified invasive species as a top challenge, and of course data limitations and resource limitations followed close behind as key challenges. We also found there was an incredible amount of local expertise in terms of the types of techniques that were being used in the field for management, as well as a robust, but I would say sort of very patchy set of practices around data collection and data analysis. And then lastly, there was a high amount of local collaboration taking place, but a surprising lack of national and regional partnership emerging around this topic in those survey findings. So as I mentioned, in 2019, we had the opportunity to bring together teams from 12 U.S. cities. The cities that were represented are listed here, and we also had a team join us from the U.S. Forest Service, which was a really wonderful way to strengthen the relationship between the agency's work on this topic and the work of local partners, as well as two NGO partners. Great, thank you, Clara. So this slide is sort of a late-breaking addition to our presentation. This is several screen grabs of headlines from papers from around the U.S. from the last couple of months, highlighting the increased use of urban parks that we've seen during the COVID period, and specifically a real increase in the use of natural areas within cities that we've observed. I would say it's been one of the, for those of us who work in this field, one of the sort of surprising things that's come out of this moment in time is the fact that social distancing and shelter-in-place guidance have really led people to explore their local parks and local natural spaces in numbers that we've never experienced before, both in New York and as we've now learned in our partner cities around the country. And we wanted to just highlight this as a theme that's really emerging in real time around this topic on this webinar. I think this is both a real opportunity as we think about increasing the visibility and finding an opportunity to really message the importance of nearby nature as a critical resource for urban residents. And at the same time, we are seeing huge budget cuts and staffing reductions to city park systems around the country, and a real increase in sort of funding scarcity, or I should say a decrease in funding for NGOs and those who rely on private philanthropy. And so I think this is going to be an especially kind of critical next couple of years as we really see opportunities to kind of build on the research and practices that are being developed and highlighted by folks within this network, and thinking about how to support the care of these places as they continue to experience a real uptick in both use and visibility, paired with potentially significant cuts to funding and staffing. And I would just say in the chat function, if folks have any sort of specific examples or resources they would like to share with me or Clara around this topic, we'd be interested to hear from you and sort of see what you're seeing in your local city park systems. And with that, I'll hand it off to Rich Hallett.